Hey everybody, and welcome to this first tasting of something a little bit unique. This is Go Along. Now, this is specifically a Chinese whiskey that has spent 5 years aging in ex-bourbon barrels. Now, a very small amount of research, because I don't like to spoil myself too much on these first tastes, but a very small amount of research has shown me that this is Australian malt, 100% Australian malt, shipped over to China, and then they create a whiskey. They themselves call it very young, and then they age it in ex-bourbon barrels for 5 years. Now, any of this could be wrong. I have not done my full research, so I'm sorry if I'm misrepresenting anything. This is what they put forward on their website, so if it's not totally accurate, that's more on them than it is on me. So, let me show you why I bought this. So, I was at the New Hampshire State Liquor Store, and I was just browsing, and usually they have very good prices there. But this last weekend, for whatever reason, everything was just way overpriced. And it was ridiculous, actually. Like, there's places I go around here that I know are overpriced, but I go because the selection's awesome. And their prices were even higher here. And that just didn't make any sense. So I did run into this, though, and it was on sale. It was marked down from 110 down to 100. And because it's saying it's a Chinese whiskey, which I've never had before, I thought that seemed like a fun idea. Now, seeing a big box like this, you expect one of two things. Either there's going to be a big skinny bottle and a couple of glasses, or there's going to be something more like this in there, which is kind of a, fancy decanter looking thing. So I'll try to get a little bit of a close-up on here after I do the first taste. So this kind of caught my eye, and I thought that this would be a fun episode. I also liked the idea that it is a Chinese whiskey, potentially one of the first. That's at least what they're putting on their website. And, always game to try something new. Whether this is a collector's thing or whatever, who cares, right? Like, don't collect whiskey, just drink it. So this, I'm going to not spend too much time talking about it, but this is 40%. Now, Go Along single malt whiskey. Go Along, I might be saying that wrong. That's kind of how they put it out there, though. They say the intent is to go after your dreams, like go along, right? So I'm pronouncing it that way. All right, let's go ahead and crack this baby open, and I'll talk a little bit more, but let's give it a minute to breathe. Oh, you know what? Actually, I just noticed there's a little thing on here, 2020-08-19. Okay, so that must be when it was... Then there's 2206. Okay, so 2020-08-19 must be when it was bottled. And then 220679... I don't know, probably. I can't imagine there's 220,000 of these, because I've seen a couple places where it said there was only 3,000 of these. So it fits in there nice. It's going to give me that good pop probably every time. All right. Immediately, just from here, I can smell the bourbon influence. So that's kind of nice. It's interesting, though. I'm a little... Sad's not the right word, because everybody and their brother is doing ex-bourbon stuff. Ex-sherry stuff, ex-rum stuff. But just thinking about a Chinese whiskey, the first one to market in the US, like, why does it have to be all Australian malt? Why does it have to be ex-bourbon barrel aged, but, like, accentuate the bourbon? I mean, I realize everything's going to be pretty much ex-bourbon barrels because we just make a crap ton of them and then send them all over the world. That's fine. More just why accentuate that? Make a Chinese whiskey. Make it somehow reflective of what you guys do. Just like Indian whiskeys, right? Like, you could try an Indian whiskey and it tastes amazing. And you could tell any whiskey from India, like, this is an Indian whiskey. So anyway, rant over. All right, let's go ahead. The color is pretty nice. They must use first fill because that's pretty dark for 5 years. But anyway, all right, let's go ahead and have a nose. Okay, interesting. Super sugary, like candy, but give me a sec. Really fruity, really fruity. I'm trying to think of what this smells like. Doesn't smell much bourbon. Well, that's not true. It does have some bourbon influence. I can smell a little bit of oak in there. Definitely caramel, not really vanilla, but what I'm getting a lot more of here is tropical fruit notes. It's funny that I said Indian whiskey because this is reflecting a lot of those similar qualities. Now, they do mention immediately, they say, hey, this is young whiskey, but it is aged 5 years, but we have very hot, humid climates and everything, and that makes everything age faster. Definitely marketing speech, but maybe not. We'll see. The nose is so far very impressive. It's I dare say like mango, or maybe like a guava. I need to smell a guava again sometime. Probably eat it too, but I need to smell a guava. I'm definitely going mango though. That is just a really interesting nose. Now this is 40%, but it is going to be my first drink of the night. So I expected to drink a little hot for the first sip, and then I'll have another sip. So cheers. I guess to China, putting out some whiskey. Sorry, I'm really giving it a minute to coat. So initial impressions, and like I said, we'll go back for another sip in just a moment. Initial impressions are, hey, this is actually pretty good. It's very smooth. There is a bit of an alcohol burn on the finish. At 40%, a little surprising. Definitely a characteristic of it just not being in a barrel long enough, but fine. Is it interesting? Kinda. Trying to think of what it reminds me of. And I'm going to think on it a little bit more. And while I'm editing this, if anything comes to mind, I'll put it down here. But I'm not confident I'm going to remember too much about what this tastes like. So let me see if I can actually give you some quality notes here. You know, I have an idea. I might be out of my mind though. Where is my balcones for just such an emergency? A little bit, but not, I don't think that's what I'm thinking of. 100% malted barley, you're going to taste malty, right? And I'm sure supremely influential malt really can be on a whiskey. Yeah, it really interesting. Let me have a sip of water, and I'm going to give another sip. I'm really taking my time with this one, only because I looked, there's nobody else doing any reviews of this, and I will do a formal review of this as well. For sure. But yeah, it's got to be the malt. It just it reminds me of American single malts in some ways. Okay, so the taste is pretty like, what do you call it? Not, I don't want to say that it's like thin, because it's kind of not, but it is. I realize that's confusing, so let me try again. So when I have a sip of this, that very first sip of the night, first sip of any whiskey of the night is always going to be the strongest, right? And what I usually try to give my whiskey a little bit more, if my whiskey is just as good on the second sip, that's great, right? The second sip is much more telling than the first sometimes. Of course, if the first is really terrible, you might not take a second sip, but you should always have at least a couple sips, because flavors change pretty dramatically between the two. When I try this the second time, it is very thin, and that's sad. The malt didn't last, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but yeah, it just kind of goes away. The initial impression was that this was pretty tasty. My secondary and tertiary impressions are that this is very thin. It has almost no finish, but it's not bad. In any way. The bottle's really cool. That doesn't matter. The whiskey is not doing anything creative, and it's not doing anything challenging or like not dangerous. Like, they're not taking any chances with this. And I'm sad about that. I wish that they would have done something cool and been like, we are Chinese whiskey. We're here. Holy crap. What is this flavor? And I think that they could have done that. Instead, they gave us 40% alcohol with bourbon influence that has some malt to it. I'm disappointed. I tend to be disappointed a lot when I tend to spend money. I mean, you'll notice a trend on my channel. Most of my videos are like under $50 or maybe at least under $60. And I find that that's just such a sweet spot for almost any whiskey. Of course, there's amazing things at higher prices, but there's also a lot of gimmicks at like $100. And I gotta say, I'm feeling like they tried, but just don't have it yet. So I'm going to keep an eye on this distillery and see what else they can do. But for the moment, if you happen to see this one, not worth $100. So it's a cool bottle though. I'll give them that. All right. Thank you for joining me here on this first taste. I know it went a little bit long. Felt like I should give it a little bit of, real chance, So anyway, have a great rest of your night. And I'll see you guys on Friday for a review of the Old Forester 1920. Talk to you soon. Cheers.